What's going on, beautiful people? It is I, your flying locomotive and faster than a speeding bullet SuperCliff, coming at you live with a brand new video. So for today's video, I want to provide y'all with my TBR list for my next 10 fantasy books that I'm about to read. Now, a lot of these books share the same series/world, so throughout I may end up meshing some books together just to make things quicker and less confusing and less choppy, all that stuff. However, before we get into my list of some of the world's most iconic and most majestic reads, if you guys are new to the channel, then smash that like and subscribe button. That way you guys never miss out on anything that happens on this majestic channel. So what are you waiting for? Let's raise the bar and go full on Super Saiyan. Hit that subscribe button. Thus, without further ado, let's get ready to dance like there's not going to be a tomorrow, sort of like in a Daft Punk music video. One more time.
One more time. Celebrate and dance so free.
But I digress. Starting off with number 1, we have Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince by JKRowling. Now, if you're wondering whether or not the Harry Potter books are rated, then the answer is no. The Harry Potter books still to this day hold up exceptionally well in quality. Now, I'll admit, I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan. However, that's more to do with my own personal preference. I prefer my fantasy to have epic battles, morally great characters, and a world that just isn't part of ours. It's completely separate. Though that isn't to say that Harry Potter isn't still amazing, because it is. Say what you will about J.K. Rowling as a person, but as a writer, she's able to craft a magical world that feels so relatable and so real, that it's hard to not visualize what it is you're reading or feeling for the characters. It immerses you, and I've been feeling that ever since I began my reread back in August. Having read so far the first 5 books, the whole experience has truly reminded me just how great the series is and why it was so successful. The Half-Blood Prince, being the 6th book of the series, is probably the more shocking of all the books, I would say. Given Dumbledore dies and whatnot, I still remember that summer when the book came out. Everyone was devastated when they found out Dumbledore died. People actually fought each other if someone spoiled the ending. Like, I actually saw that happen in my old camp. But yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely excited to reread it, and I can't wait to dive into those chapters between Harry and Dumbledore and them trying to solve the question of how to defeat Voldemort. I love when characters feel desperate towards wanting to stop an impending evil. It makes things feel super epic, and knowing that the book ends with Dumbledore getting killed by Snape, and essentially Dumbledore being this wise father-esque figure for Harry, yeah, it sucks that he dies, but it makes the stakes higher, and in turn it makes it feel more epic. So yeah, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Next up, we have the first book of the TheFirstLaw standalone trilogy, that being Best Served Cold by JoeAbercrombie. So I recently just finished reading the original TheFirstLaw trilogy, Blade Itself, Before They're Hanged, and The Last Argument of Kings, and holy shit, these books are amazing. One of Abercrombie's greatest strengths is his ability to write characters. It's very similar to George R. R. Martin's style. These books, this world, are filled with morally great characters. So much so that in the end, the message taken away is that, basically nothing is truly good and nothing is truly evil. Everyone is in their own right a shitty person, and everyone does a certain good thing at a certain time. It's really great stuff, and having just entered the chat for TheFirstLaw, from what I hear about these books, post-original trilogy, they've only gotten better. Not to mention that this book is actually being made into a movie. Apparently, it's going to be directed by 2016's Deadpool director, Tim Miller, and it will star Rebecca Ferguson, who I just love. So yeah, and the book Synopsis is about a revenge story. I'm all for it. Give me some of that gritty revenge storytelling. Number 3, we have Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows by J.K. Rowling. Now, when it comes to the final Harry Potter book, I gotta be honest, aside from what's featured in the movie, this is the Harry Potter book that I've read, but forget the most of what happens in the pages. I don't know if I had a concussion when I was reading the book, but regardless, I'm psyched up to reread this. This book I know is epic. The final battle between Harry Potter and Lord Voldemort, the battle for Hogwarts, what's not to love? Plus, I know there's a ton in this book that's not in the movie, which is probably another reason why I'm super hyped. And spoilers, book 8, The Cursed Child, it's not real, so don't expect me to ever read it or cover it on this channel because I won't. The Cursed Child, in my opinion, is probably the Rubicon for J.K. Rowling. I feel like ever since she released that book, her life has just plummeted. But yeah, Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows, can't wait. Next up, we have the second standalone book in the TheFirstLaw world, The Heroes by JoeAbercrombie. Again, for all the reasons I've listed about wanting to read more TheFirstLaw and more of JoeAbercrombie, all of that is the same for The Heroes. But another reason I'm exceptionally high for this book is I've been told that, from online discourse and by some of my friends, that the book takes place during a 3-day battle. And once I heard that, I was like, oh, super giddy. Not only because I love fantasy battles, but in terms of JoeAbercrombie's writing prose, not only is one of his strengths that of writing good characters, but he's also very good at, when it comes to writing action. He has a cynical writing style that makes you feel a part of the battle and the gruesomeness that's involved. Like, think of the word mud when you're reading his battle scenes. You can actually feel the gooiness of the grossness of it. For book number 5, we have Dungeon Crawler Carl, book 1 of a 10-book series, written by Matt Dinneman. Now, in terms of personal taste, as I mentioned prior, I like my fantasy that have battles and epic world building and great characters and stakes. So when the internet told me that, I should check out this book, Dungeon Crawler Carl, I wasn't sold. Now, when I looked up on this book, the surface level of its premise is really stupid, but I feel like once you read it, it's amazing, and once you accept its humor and what it is in tone, you're going to end up loving it. Now, I've yet to read an actual page of the book. However, I got a sample of the audiobook, and oh my god, the audiobook sold me. And once I heard it, I was like, yep, I understand what this book is. I'm in. For me, I love stand-up comedy, I love dark humor, and I don't know why, but I just love cynical humor. Comedians like Louis C.K., they just crack me up, and that is 1000% the vibe I got from this book. In fact, I'm going to read off the synopsis. The apocalypse will be televised. A man, his ex-girlfriend's cat, a sadistic game show unlike anything in the universe, a dungeon crawl where survival depends on killing your prey in the most entertaining way possible, and a flash, every human erected construction on Earth, from Buckingham Palace to the tiniest of sheds, collapses in a heap sinking into the ground. The buildings and all the people inside have all been atomized and transformed into the dungeon. 18-level labyrinth filled with traps, monsters, and loot. A dungeon so enormous it circles the entire globe. Only a few dare venture inside, but once you're in, you can't get out. And what's worse, each level has a time limit. You have but days to find a staircase to the next level down, or it's game over. In this game, it's not about your strength or your dexterity, it's about your followers, your views, your clout. It's about building an audience and killing those goblins with style.
I was the best because the crowd loved me. Win the crowd, and you'll win your freedom.
You just can't survive here. You gotta survive big. You gotta fight with vigor, with excitement. You gotta make them stand up and cheer. And if you do have that it factor, you may just find yourself with a following. That's the only way to truly survive in this game. With the help of the loot boxes dropped upon you by the generous benefactors watching from across the galaxy, they call it Dungeon Crawler World. But for Carl, it's anything but a game. So yeah, Dungeon Crawler Carl, cannot wait to check this out. Book number 6, we have the third standalone book and TheFirstLaw, for I am talking about Red Country by JoeAbercrombie. Now, I don't have much to say about this book particular, but same deal with Best Served Cold and The Heroes. I love JoeAbercrombie, I love The First World, so it makes sense. My excitement for this book is legit. Now, I don't really know what to expect from this book. I haven't really heard much about it other than that this book it feels like a Western, which, by the way, fantasy writers, we need more fantasy Western worlds other than the Dark Tower. Yeah, I'm all for this book, cannot wait. Now, this next pick is going to be a bit different because for book number 7, I have myself reading Kings of Paradise, book 1 of the Ash and Sand Trilogy by Richard Nell, and I have The Great Hunt, book 2 of the Wheel of Time by RobertJordan. Now, the reason I have it this way is because Kings of Paradise is a Grimdark series, Southern Asian-inspired war fantasy, and for what I've been told, there's a lot of messed up shit in the book that happens, which I'm all about. But, also by this point, I would have already have read, 6 FirstLaw books this year alone. So depending how I feel at the time, I may need a fantasy book that isn't so dark and disturbing with its themes, which is where the Wheel of Time comes in. Because I've read book 1, The Eye of the World, and I'm interested in book 2, The Great Hunt. Now, the reason I'm iffy in terms of having The Great Hunt be in my 7th spot is mostly because despite me liking book 1 and what the world is, doing, I believe I gave the book 3.5 stars on Goodreads. But yeah, as a book, in terms of RobertJordan's writing style, it was exceptionally wordy to the point where it really takes a lot out of the reader to get through the chapters. And at times, it feels like you're reading a textbook in school. Now, granted, the story involving the Dragonborn, prophecy, and all that stuff, the world building, the Trollocs, all that is great. But because the way Jordan writes, it being so wordy, it can feel boring and not engaging for the reader. It feels like a workout, but the type where you don't end up sweating, you just end up doing 10 minutes of cardio and fuck around on your phone for a bit. Legit, there's a part where he writes a page where he describes a person wearing a dress and describes that dress in like insane detail. And don't get me wrong, I love my fantasy worlds to be described in flowery, majestic fashion. I like being immersed in the world, but 2 pages dedicated to a fucking dress, maybe you don't have to do that. But who knows, maybe by then I'll feel a need more for Grimdark and maybe check out Kings of Paradise. Either way, I'm excited for either book, Kings of Paradise and The Great Hunt. Now, these last 3 books I have, I'm putting them together because they're a trilogy, and that is the Age of Madness Trilogy by JoeAbercrombie. Books include A Little Hatred, The Trouble with Peace, and The Wisdom of Crowds. I want to read these books for obvious reasons. As I've said, I love JoeAbercrombie, and for all the reasons I've listed to his prior books in this list, that's why, but also because for 2 additional reasons. First is when it comes to fantasy and science fiction series, I've not read a lot of series yet or have progressed that far in a series where in the books you follow a set of characters for a couple of books, but for the next wave you follow essentially a new generation of characters, a new cast. I've yet to experience that in my stories. I know Mistborn does it, the Stormlight Archives will do that after book 5, and the Dune books do that following Dune Messiah. But because JoeAbercrombie is amazing with characters, I find the idea of getting into the Age of Madness and following a new cast in a series of books to be less intimidating. And the second reason is that word on the street says that this trilogy is better than the original. So obviously that just, that's like wonderful music for my ears. And for me personally, I love the world of TheFirstLaw. I know that the world isn't the main focus. It isn't really why people check out these books. The characters are like the draw of the books. That's why you read First Law. But I am intrigued with the various countries and all the factions, and just seeing how a certain country started out from, in the Blade itself, and seeing how far it progressed or declined in Little Hatred. I'm very curious about that. I want to see like how that works out. So yeah, I can't wait to check out the Age of Madness trilogy. That about wraps up my 10 books on my TBR list. And as always, I'm your majestic sailor of words, SuperCliff. And if you guys are new to the channel, then do me a solid by smashing that like and subscribe button, and also the notification bell, so you'll never miss out on an upload, and so you'll always be kept up to date with your favorite top-tier fantasy books, stories, in this fantastic creative world. Now tell me, what are your thoughts and opinions on these books? What are some of the fantasy, sci-fi books that you're currently reading? And what books are you looking forward to read? Let me know down in the comment section below. And until the next video, peace. Giggity goo.